In today's video, we're gonna burn up my garden with this propane weed burner. Actually, I'm gonna burn the edges where it's grown out of control with grass and other weeds. And I'm gonna show you what I'm growing in my garden. If you don't know this about me, I've always loved growing my own food, having a big garden, especially heirloom varieties, unusual varieties, and it's just something I'm really passionate about. I used to post on YouTube a lot of garden videos, and viewers have been asking about my garden this year, so I thought I'd give you a tour and show you some of the tips to have a great big garden even when you don't have a lot of time. On Fridays, I've been posting different content than I usually post with the mouse traps. That includes outdoor survival skills, flint knapping, fishing, and growing heirloom food. So let me show you what I'm growing in my garden, and then I'll show you some of the tips to have a great big garden even when you have a crazy busy schedule. My life is so busy. I work a full-time job. I run a YouTube channel. I have 4 kids. We're doing 4-H this week. My son's selling 2 sheep, so they're at the fair all week. We do baseball, dance class, just so many activities, but I want to have a garden, so I've learned a few things to make it manageable where it doesn't grow out of control with weeds, and I don't have to worry about watering that much. It's not a big deal. So here's garden box number 1. There's peas starting to grow up the backside. It's kind of funny that I grow peas because I have kids that absolutely love coming out and eating them, and other kids who are allergic to them and need an EpiPen if they eat them. So he stays away from this side of the garden, but I love coming out and eating sugar snap peas. Anything that is greens, kind of healthy to add to your diet, such as kale I grow in here. We got chard, fennel, a lot of herbs. And it's pretty sparse right now. Our garden is a month or 2 behind because our spring was so wet and cold. I planted a lot of stuff that just didn't come up. It rotted in the ground. Also, it was so wet for so long, unlike anything I've seen before. We had huge slug problems. They pretty much ate everything that popped up. So I'm trying to do a late planting and bounce back, and things are starting to come alive. The peas are starting to grow up that wire in the back. So this is just a great place to come out and get a bunch of snacks from the garden. Here's garden box number 2. It's my pepper garden. I grew so many varieties of peppers that I grew from seed and started, and I planted them, and they just didn't do well in the cool, wet weather. So I have a few that are doing okay. I bought some at the local store. They look pretty bad. Some of the ones that are growing that I tried to grow, some of the hottest in the world, the Carolina Reapers, Trinidad Scorpions. I have Scotch bonnets. My sister actually lived in Jamaica for a little while and brought back some Scotch bonnet seeds. And I've been growing Scotch bonnet peppers ever since. They're pretty spicy, different jalapenos. So we'll see if I can salvage those. I also have okra growing in here, some eggplants in the front, lots of Swiss chard, and then I'm growing an heirloom grain. It's a barley in the middle. So all kinds of things in here. It's kind of high density, seeing what's taking hold and growing, and another fun box. Here's garden box number 3. It's set up for more of the climbing varieties of plants. We have scarlet runner beans. I have my cucumbers that I grow on a trellis. I really like the Armenian cucumbers, which are actually more like a melon, but they taste great. They taste just like a cucumber. I have broomstick kale, so that should grow pretty tall. I'm growing varieties of bitter melons. I've never grown them before. That's something new. I saw it in a book called The Blue Zone Diet, where people who live a long time eat bitter melons, so I thought I'd try it. Asian cuisine. And in the middle, I'm growing chickpeas. So I'm gonna try to do that and make some of my own hummus. And behind my raised garden boxes, I'm growing squash. I have summer varieties with zucchini and yellow squash. I love harvesting those all summer long. When the squash is young, I thin slice them and place them on the barbecue. It's pretty much a staple of summer dinner. And in the back there, I'm growing winter squash. My favorite variety of all time is a Native American heirloom called Gediocosamin. I posted a video on my channel where my wife cooks up the Gediocosamin and makes an amazing soup. I'll put a link down below. But those grow very large. They'll take up this whole back part here growing on the weed mats, and it's very productive, and every garden needs a Gediocosamin. And finally, running the length of my garden, I have a fence where I grow up my tomatoes. I love heirloom varieties. My favorite is one called Kellogg's Breakfast, but I grow Amish Paste, Cherokee, all kinds. We have cherry tomatoes up front. They're very productive. The kids come out here and pick them. And I'm growing some unusual varieties of tomatoes and tomato relatives. I'll show you those now. Here's a brand new plant I've never grown in my garden before. I love trying new things. This is a complete experiment, but after seeing it pop up, I don't think this plant is safe enough to grow in my garden year after year. We'll have to see. Hopefully the fruit is very tasty because I don't know if it's worth the danger. If you look at the leaves, they're completely covered in these needle-like prickles, also the stems. Technically, these are prickles and not thorns or spines, but it's almost like a cactus ready to grab you and cut you up. Now, I started this plant from seeds I got from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, and they're calling it a Lychee Tomato. But it also goes by many different names. Now, there's quite a few stories and rumors about the fruit of this plant online. Some even say it was eaten along with human flesh by cannibals. It's supposed to taste like a cross between a cherry and a tomato. So we're gonna grow it up, taste the fruit, and see if it's excellent, and if we're gonna keep growing it, or if we're gonna pull it up, get rid of those prickles, and never grow it again. Now at the end of my tomato row, I am growing some other plants. I have tomatillos. I love adding those to salsa. I also have some corn here, some rare varieties of corn. These are pretty much all purple, and some fava beans. I got all of these at Baker Creek Heirloom Seed as well. It's a great place to get seed, and I love growing the heirloom varieties. Now you'll notice that when I water, I use this drip irrigation system. That way, all I have to do is turn on the water, turn on the timer, delivers the right amount of water right to the base of the plants. I don't have to worry about disease with the water on the leaves, especially with tomatoes and other varieties. And I can turn it on with the timer and forget about it. It will shut off. That way I don't overwater. I don't spend a lot of time with the hose out here. Delivers the water to where it needs to go, exactly right at the base of the plants. So if you're not using drip irrigation, you're really wasting time and money. And it takes a lot of the fun out of gardening when you have to spend all your time out there with the hose. The other thing is weed control. I'm using these weed mats inside, and then I'm gonna mulch this and then use the weed burner on the outside. So let's go take care of that. There's weeds growing on the fence. Let's start burning. Okay, so we have our weed burner. I have a hose in case the fire gets out of hand, but the grass is pretty green around it, so it shouldn't spread. We're gonna go down this fence line, light the grass and weeds on fire. Usually they'll die, but they won't completely burn up. There's too much moisture, they'll dry out. Then I come back a few days later and it just goes up and burns completely, and it's very clean after we use the weed burner. So let's torch this whole fence line and remove all the weeds. So with this first pass, a lot of the dead dry grass burned up, but these living plants are now wilted. So they're pretty much gonna die, especially in this heat. I'm gonna wait about a week, then come back and it'll be completely dry, and then I can just burn it off and it'll be down to bare dirt. You can see this is hiding a bunch of garden pests. These are voles. They're running into my garden. I've had huge problems with them eating cucumbers and other produce, so exposing those makes it less likely to have this rodent damage. They just love being concealed by this grass, so opening that up makes them feel less safe and less likely to venture into my garden. Well, there's just a quick tour of my garden. It's pretty early in the growing season, so there's not a lot to show, but as it matures and fruit starts to ripen, the tomatoes are ready, I'll show you what varieties I'm growing and how I like to process them and eat them. Thank you so much for watching. I know not everyone likes the gardening videos, but quite a few viewers do. And on Fridays, I'm just trying to change it up. I'll do more flint knapping, survival skills, more fishing. People seem to really like that one. And occasionally I'll throw in some garden videos, but it's getting really hot in the sun. So I'm gonna go inside and have my favorite drink, an Arnold Palmer, and cool down. But thank you so much for your support. Continue to tell me what you wanna see. This video came from viewer requests. A lot of people wanted to see the garden, what I'm growing this year, and I like sharing my passions with you. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. I have more mousetrap videos on Mondays and other videos on Fridays.